it is managing the human resources, the employees of an organization, or in the broader context, if it is the managing of the human resources of a country, all of such activities, all of such functions, they find their places or it is managing the human resources, the employees of an organization, or in the broader context, if it is the managing of the human resources of a country, all of such activities, all of such functions, they find their places in the human resource management. The subject is very amazing one, and today we shall further delve into the more such sub-functional areas under the operative functions of HR. Right? In the previous day, we have seen that HRM functions have been broadly divided into two parts. One is the managerial function, and second is the operative function. Right? First one is the managerial function, and second one is the operative function. So let's take a quick recap, and let me know as what comes under the managerial function.
Planning, organizing, directing and controlling.
Excellent. So planning, organizing, directing, controlling. These are the factors, these are the functions which come under the purview of the managerial functions of HR. Try to understand that all these functions are again same and common to all other functional domains. So where lies the distinction? Where lies the great significance of discharging the functions with regard to the human resource management? It is actually the operative functions, right? So operative functions have been further, operative functions, you asked me something, it is operative functions, right? Operative functions have been further classified into procurement, development, compensation, integration, and maintenance, right? So these have been divided into 5 such sub-functions. Now, as I said that all of these things which I provided to you in the previous day class, that they form the part of our syllabus, and they need actually in-depth understanding. So the very first operative function is the procurement function. Now let's take a recap as what comes under the procurement function. So procurement function, the very first function or sub function that comes under the procurement function is job analysis. The next one? Very good. Human resource planning. I have written it in short. HRP. Right? The expanded form of HRP is the human resource planning. The next is then comes selection. After recruitment comes selection. Then comes induction. Then comes transfer. Transfer. Then comes promotion. Then comes separation. Then comes separation, right? So how many functions in all? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. I hope that you are actually aware of the basic understanding of these functions mentioned on the board. You know, every organization needs human resources. I emphasized in the previous class that despite having all of the resources like materials, like capital, like land and buildings, machines, if we do not have the human beings to work to optimize these resources, to utilize these resources in the proper direction, then job would not be accomplished. So it is the necessity that we procure human resources according to our needs. So procurement function starts with job analysis. You know, job analysis is gathering every pertinent facts of a job. Rather, we can say that it is just profiling of a job. What sort of skills are required in accomplishing the job, qualifications necessary to do the job. This is one part. And another part is the primary, the most important part is what the job is all about. Like what we have to accomplish, what sort of technical involvement of the machine is required to do that job. How do we, distinguish several components of a job and assimilate all those components together and make a whole job? How do we classify that job, place in certain categories? So job description essentially comprises of two important elements. One is, that was also discussed I think previously in the last class. Job description and job specification, right? After the job analysis is made, that means you have made a detailed study as organization is having these type of jobs or different types of jobs to accomplish in order to achieve organizational goals, and the qualifications and experiences necessary, skills necessary to accomplish these jobs. Once this is done, then the next part is we need to go for human resource planning. So we shall discuss today in detail about the human resource planning, right? So our today's lecture would be on HRP. Things that we need to discuss under HRP, just I shall write it down on the board and shall cover these topics one after another. Now that, let me ask you a question, a very general question. in the 90s, we have seen that majority of the organizations, industries, especially the public sector ones, were in a crisis of, of remaining viable in terms of its revenue. One of the prime causes for such PSUs were they were overstaffed. If you go back to the history of that stage, you will find that several initiatives were taken by different industries to reduce the human resources in those organizations. As a result of which, we came to know various, terminologies like VRS, golden handshake, iron handshake, retrenchment, etc. Sometimes layoff. So what, according to you, could be the prime cause attributed to such downsizing? The question is open to all. Anybody can answer.
Sir, first of all, it is overstaffing, and second is the skills were changing. So the golden age people were not adapted to the skills which was necessary in the modern trade, like utilization of machinery required certain skills. So they they weren't open to accept a change also, so that the machinery should come, they will get to learn. All these things actually are basically the skill change.
So he said that all those organizations are overstaffed, and at the same time, the requirement of the skill sets from these people were changing very fast. The old skills were becoming obsolete every day, and there was the need of re-equipping themselves, these human resources, with the new set of skill sets, which the old employees, aged employees, could not. Okay, so in this, in this way, there was the necessity to bring about certain, measures wherein you can curtail the human resources for your organization. This is one of the answers that he has answered, and to some extent he is correct. But there are other explanations, other logic as well. What could be the another logic? She said that it could be because of the losses that the company was incurring. The revenues were not enough. The companies were not able to generate enough revenues to sustain, and therefore, as a measure, that it went for curtailment of the human resources. Right? Any other reasons?
Technological improvements.
Technological improvements, as he has already said, cited this reason. What led to such a huge human resource recruitment in those organizations?
Sir, first of all, led to recruitment. Sir, first of all, the land which was actually required to build the factories were actually given by the farmers and all.
Well, let me be more specific, little more specific in this regard, and ask you this question like this. What were the prime objective of setting up those PSUs there during that time? India as a state, what was its motive in establishing those PSUs? And
So to some extent it was about decentralization of wealth and power.
okay, and to be more specific, to provide job opportunities to the en masse, to a large number of people. Therefore, it defaulted one very important aspect, that aspect is under study right now. That is, human resource planning could not be done properly. As the egalitarian state, a state which thrives and fosters on socialism, where there is the constitution provides for equity, equality of opportunity, equal opportunity. So there was the necessity for this state, for this country, to provide employment to the people for their livelihood, to bring about improvements in the lives of the people, and as a result of which employment were offered through these PSUs. And at a certain point of time, through the passage of time, we found that the human resource has become huge, as there was very fast technological developments taking place in industries. So, working with the help of machines, automated technologies that came into being, and we found that the surplus human resources in huge number in those organizations. In order to sustain and remain viable in the age of cutthroat competition, especially when we have already adopted soon thereafter in 90s the LPGs, liberalization, privatization and globalization, wherein the foreign companies started coming and setting up their operations in India. The geographical boundaries became variable. So there was competition prevailing all around. In the face of such stiff competition, it was the necessity that you manage your human resources properly. Of late, therefore, human resource planning has become very crucial, a very important aspect. So what is the human resource planning? Human resource planning, say in one sentence, if you have to define human resource planning, it is the employment of right number of people, right type of people, of right number, doing the right job at right time, accomplishing organizational goals and deriving both long and short term benefits. So the process of HRP starts with analyzing organizational plans, forecasting demands, analyzing organizational plans, forecasting demands, forecasting supply. So there are 5 steps. There are 5 steps involved in the HRP process. The step starts with analyzing organizational plans. Your organization must be having its plans in terms of its work, and then you will have to find out job wise, sex wise, skills wise, grade wise, department wise, plant wise. You have to have a detailed study as how many human resources are required to accomplish all those different types of tasks in the organization, in the short run and also in the long run. Once you are able to analyze the plans of the organization, both short term and the long term, then the next thing, the thing that comes in the order is the forecasting demand of human resources. So you need to have a proper demand forecasting method or technique in place. There are several demand forecasting methods are in practice, are in vogue, like so you need to forecast the human resource requirement for your organization. That is called demand forecasting. In the demand forecasting comes managerial judgment as one such technique, work study method, another such technique, ratio trend analysis, yet another important technique, and statistical methods, various econometric models. So they are the part of demand forecasting under the HR. Forecasting of demands of human resources. Now that in every organization, manager is very important. Quite often we find that managers are able to judge as how many human resources, how many manpower are required for different positions, different jobs, different plans, different places in the organization. When the manager applies his or her judgments, intuition, in forecasting the demand of the human resources, then such a technique is called managerial judgment. Manager has quite detailed idea about the jobs that are being accomplished at different positions, at different places in the organization, and accordingly, manager is able to, judge, able to decide as how many human resources will be required for each such positions. So that technique is known as managerial judgment. Next comes is the work study method. Right? So let's do a sum on work study method. 2223, for example, at the year is 1,60,000 units. Standard man hours needed to perform each unit is 0.25, that is 0.25 hours, and the work ability per employee in man hours in the same year is 2,000. Then estimate the number of employees required. .25 is the man hours for producing one unit. For producing 1,60,000 units. Man hours required equal to 1,60,000 60,000 multiplied by 0.15 equal to 40,000. Okay. For producing 1,60,000 units, man hours required 1,60,000. एक यूनिट के लिए for 1 unit 0.25 hours. For 1,60,000 units, it's 40,000 man hours. Right? Now, total man hours of an employee in a given year is 2,000. Therefore, now again, if we further, see that in the span of control is estimated as 10 in that company, in this company. So how many supervisors should be needed? 2 supervisors. Very good. Because one supervisor manages 10 employees. Right? Span of control is 10. For every 10 employees, there is one supervisor needed. So if span of control is 10, then how many supervisors needed? 2. If span of control is 5, how many supervisors needed? How many supervisors needed? 4. If span of control is 4, how many supervisors needed? How many? 5. Right. So if in a given year, 5% is calculated as 5% is the absenteeism. From the record of the company, we can find that on an average, in a year, 5% remains absent always. 5% of the employees. Right? And say remaining 5% retires, becomes disabled on an average. So it becomes 10%. So you will have to, while calculating the human resource requirement, you will have to take all those factors into consideration and then add up accordingly so that you do not make a shortfall of the human resource requirements. Suppose if in a company you have calculated that there are 200 people required through this work study method and 5% of the employees they remain absent. So 5% remains absent means for 200 what number it makes? 10 people remains absent. And 10 people and 5% another say retires or otherwise becomes disabled, etc. Dies, etc. So it accounts for another 5%. So you have to calculate this 5% plus 5%, 10%, and then 10% you have to reduce from this overall requirement of 200 that you have found out already, and these 20 people to be added with the existing calculation and make your human resource requirement as 220. Right? So these are the things to be kept in mind. You will face this kind of questions in university examination, wherein there will be a story, a question given in a paragraph, and all those things would be mentioned there. You will have to just take out all those figures and then calculate accordingly. Understand? So this is how we calculate the human resource requirements under the work study method. Forecasting method in the demand forecasting technique. The next one is ratio train analysis. The next one is ratio train analysis. Ratio train analysis. From the very name itself, it implies that we need to make a study of the trend of the past ratios and apply those past ratios in the future production and estimate the human resource requirement. So here I just write down the mathematics sum. We just calculate it. I know you know the basic ratios. In 21-22 is 50. This you already have. So what will be the ratio? You will have to calculate. Ratio between worker and the worker and the units. Ratio of number of supervisors in the same year 2021-22 is 5. So what will be the ratio? Estimated production in 2020. Now the question comes. Estimated production in 2020-23 is 60,000 units. Now you had in the previous year, the number of units as 50,000. In the succeeding year, your estimated production is 60,000 units, means 10,000 units more. So number of workers required in 2022-23 and number of supervisors required in 2022-23. Work out this sum. 2021-22 is 50. So what is the ratio? Isn't it? This will be the ratio. Ratio between these two. Number of supervisors in the year 2021-23 is 5. So, what would be the ratio between number of supervisors and number of workers? Isn't it? Is it clear or not? So, how do you calculate the number of workers required in 60,000 into 1 divided by 1,000. So that becomes 60. I'll give another sum and we'll be calculating that. So, production, you'll have to study the past data, and studying the past data, you'll have to calculate the ratios of the past, and those ratios are to be applied for future requirements, and accordingly you will have to estimate the workers requirement or supervisors requirement, right? The manpower requirement for your organization. So I have presented here, written here a very simple sum from the textbook. Here it is written that production level in the year 2021-22 is 50,000 units. Number of workers in 2021-22 is 50. Now here we calculate the ratio as 50 is to 50,000. So that becomes, if you simplify it, then that becomes, if you divide it by 50, then that becomes 1 is to 1,000, right? This is how the ratio is simplified. Number of supervisors required is 5, right? And here, if you find the ratio, calculate the ratio between the supervisor and the worker, that becomes 5 is to 50. This 5 figure is already given, and we have already seen that it is also given 50 workers. So the ratio is 5 is to 50. That means 1 is to 10. Right? 1 is to 10. These are the past ratios. Now the same ratios are to be applied for your future calculations. Like estimated production in 2022-23 is 60,000 units. number of workers required that you have to estimate, you will have to find out using this ratio. 60,000, here you can multiply, it's a simple formula that you have already learned in our school days. That 60,000 multiplied by 1 and this upon 1,000, so that becomes 60. So number of workers required is 60. And number of supervisors required is using this ratio. 60 workers for 60 workers. This ratio is to be calculated, is to be applied 60 into 1 divided by 10. The same way that we have done here, and that becomes 6. That where from these human resources can be procured. So we have two probable sources or possible sources. One is the external source and another is the internal source. So in internal source, your promotions, transfer, these are the sources of the human resources. But from external sources, you will have to recruit the human resources from outside and then fill in the gaps of the human resource requirement. Therefore, it is important that you maintain a human resource inventory, right? In the human resource inventory, what is important is you have to take stock of the present human resource requirement and potential losses that might occur in this given time period, potential losses due to death, due to resignation, due to retrenchment, due to voluntary, retirements, VRS schemes like that, potential losses. And potential additions like, transfer, promotion, potential losses could also be from the emotions as well. Finally, you have seen the problems that we come across, that we face while planning for the human resources and how these problems can be tackled, can be overcome in order to make a human resource plan successfully in your organization. If you have any more doubts in your mind, you can plan. Well then, thank you very much. That's all for today.